Malvick, and my presentation is on the benefits of a dominant language. Language is defined as a system of communication by speaking, writing, or making signs in a way that can be understood, or any different systems of communication used in particular regions. Language is used to express oneself, communicate with others, conduct business, and many other things. The 7 billion people on Earth speak around 7,000 different languages. However, linguists believe over half of the world's languages will disappear over the next century as people abandon their native language for more dominant ones such as English, Spanish, and Mandarin. Although the loss of language is tragic, I believe there is no denying the need of dominant languages. As the world becomes increasingly globalized, the need for communication across lingual borders has risen. Having a dominant language makes things easier and eliminates confusion in business, schools, the scientific world, and international affairs, although it does lead to the loss of culture as smaller languages die off. I'll be discussing all of these things in my presentation today. Okay, business and international affairs. Over the past century, global interactions have increased, and the need for quick and easy communication across countries with different languages has increased. Thus, many businesses who want to expand into other countries have switched their common language to English, the rising dominant language of the world, in order to streamline communication and avoid leaving team members unable to understand. This demonstrates a benefit of having a dominant language. Business would be nearly impossible to conduct if everyone spoke different languages and no one was able to understand each other. English has been chosen as the so-called international language, which has led many people around the world who wish to participate in business or international affairs to learn it. Translation efforts can be tedious and costly, and therefore many people are instead choosing to adopt English, which has been leading to its rise as a dominant language. A dominant language is also useful in the scholarly and academic world. Publishing in one main language, such as English, ensures that the work will be able to reach the largest audience possible. Researchers have noticed that publications in smaller, less widely spread languages, such as Portuguese or something like that, have far less impact and are read by a smaller amount of people than those written in larger or more dominant languages. Those who do not write in a dominant language become less powerful, showing that a dominant language would benefit academic and scientific communities because there would no longer be anyone left out due to their language. The lack of a dominant language leads to only those who are able to afford to learn to read and write in languages such as English to be able to reach wider audiences. One example is that in Brazil, there was a lot of research being done on the Zika virus that was making very good points, but no one really noticed it, and it wasn't very widely spread because the language in Brazil is Portuguese, but not very many other people speak Portuguese besides those in Brazil. Having a dominant language would help make sure that all research gets the recognition that it deserves. A dominant language also benefits schools. Having one language spoken eliminates confusion in the classroom and allows education to function more smoothly. However, this is not to say that the native language of students should not be valued. There are many benefits of learning by using a first language, and it can often make things clear and more understandable to students. However, despite the benefits that come with speaking one's native language in the classroom, a dominant language is still very beneficial. Having a school where 5 different languages are spoken is not realistic and would not benefit anyone. It would only create confusion and disorganization. Exactly translating words and topics that were made to be discussed in a different language leads to loss of useful language practice, and meaning can also be lost. Programs for students who do not speak the dominant language as a first language are invaluable and can contribute tremendously to making classroom learning understandable to students. An example of one of these programs would be ESL, which stands for English as a Second Language, where students are taught to speak and do schoolwork in English in a way that correlates to the areas assessed in standardized tests. These programs help make sure that having a dominant language in schools is as effective as it is meant to be. However, dominant languages can also lead to a loss of culture. The same large languages that can benefit the world in so many ways can also lead to important parts of small culture being lost. Many words of small languages are tied closely with the environment and the history of the people and cannot be translated perfectly into a dominant language. As Reimer stated in their article, Vanishing Voices, different languages highlight the varieties of human experience, revealing as mutable aspects of life that we tend to think of as settled and universal, such as our experience of time, number, or color. These small parts of languages that are unique and not found in others are lost when people make the switch over to a dominant language. As languages die, parts of the culture the people the language belongs to dies as well, leading to a loss in traditional practices, as many traditional practices are tied to the language, such as the role of a shaman or a priest. This graph shows language loss around the world, and as you can see, some areas are much more in risk than others, such as Australia and the Americas, who have many more endangered, critically endangered, and extinct languages. All languages are important parts of culture and should be valued for the different lenses they allow people to see the world through. Culture is lost when people switch from their native language to dominant languages. However, due to the growing need to communicate between international borders and streamline communications, a dominant language can be very beneficial and is perhaps even necessary. This need makes it hard to save languages that are used by a very small minority. Although some argue that having a dominant language gives an advantage to those who are native speakers, I believe this problem could be eliminated if the dominant language was learned by everyone across the globe at a young age. As our world becomes increasingly globalized, it has become more important than ever for everyone to be able to communicate effectively with each other, especially in the fields of science, academics, business, and international affairs. Having a dominant language benefits everyone as it can level the playing field and allow everyone to participate fully in all areas of study and career paths. Thank you.
How valid and reliable are the sources that you use?
My sources are about half peer-reviewed scholarly articles from EBSCO hosts and about half journalistic articles, because there were some statistics and facts that the EBSCO hosts went to in depth when I just wanted a more broader view of the general idea.
If you had more time, what additional research would you conduct?
I would have done more additional research on how realistic it is to teach everyone one dominant language and actually implement this into society, and also if more than one dominant language could be useful, like say having Spanish and English have equal influence because more people speak Spanish natively, or if one dominant language would be best for everyone.
All right, thank you.